Be with you momentarily.
Okay. I was like, what is going on here? Hi, Karen. Can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah, we're good. That was something. I don't usually have problems like that.
Well, and of course, I didn't even think to look. So, you know, but I tried going through the website and then entering the code in, and it just waited and waited and waited and waited. So,
Yeah. Well, I did that 3 times, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to shut this whole thing down and start over because, hey, it's an electronic device. Sometimes they cramp.
it's true.
Okay, cramp. Nothing but a cramp.
I hear you. That's my mode. I'll be if you just see a spinning wheel, don't be surprised.
I won't be.
Oh boy.
How's things going?
They're going. We got one boat launched and it's not sinking, so that's good.
That's good.
But we've got two boats due this week. And another 3 due next week. So
Hey, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
How are you? I just got home 45 minutes ago.
Oh, geez, good for you.
On my trip, yeah.
You are a jet setter. I've said that before, I think.
Or I have. One of us has.
And now I'm back for a while.
He's never here.
Oh boy, it's 6 o'clock. We've got a public hearing. David. Do have a quorum, technically. I wonder if Mike and Jordan
I'm here. Here comes Mike. He was in as an attendee.
You know, we've been sailing so smoothly so far. So I'll give a welcome. It is 6 p.m., so we're going to get going. It is May 24th. Welcome, everyone, to the Lincolnville Selectmen's meeting. We are still operating under, well, not necessarily what the governor has shared most recently, but since our last policy setting, we are operating under the state of emergency that was declared by the governor, and we are still subject to the Maine Freedom of Access Act. And so we are holding this meeting via Zoom. We encourage the public to participate in this public meeting through telephonic, video, electronic, or other similar means of remote participation. As always, with any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us or at the town office. All action shall be taken via roll call, including adjournment. The public can participate in this meeting via the chat feature. Please wait to be recognized. And someone, I guarantee, will notice, and feel free to utilize the chat feature or raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. So we have a public hearing scheduled for 6 p.m. So we're going to get started with that first, and then we'll roll along with our other agenda, our regular agenda. And David, would you care to give a brief synopsis as to why we are having this.
Sure. On Tuesday, June 8th is Election Day. We'll be in the Lincolnville Central School conducting the voting from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The Board of Selectmen opted earlier this year to do town meeting via secret ballot referendum versus the open meetings that we've had sometimes in the past because of the uncertainty surrounding the pandemic. When any question that's voted on via secret ballot requires a public hearing so that people can convince their friends and neighbors on how to vote on a certain article, and to try to replicate what goes on at open town meeting. Board's required to have a public hearing for the secret ballot questions, and that's what's on the docket for tonight.
Thank you for that. So with that brief synopsis, and if there are further questions, we can get into that. I will entertain a motion, please.
I move that the board open the public hearing regarding the referendum questions for the June 8th, 2021 annual and special town meetings.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late? What's your
Yes.
vote? Selectman Garrettson?
Yes.
Selectman Ray? I think you're muted. Still muted.
Still muted.
Still muted. Can you unmute him, David? Is that a thing we can do?
There he is.
Yes.
Yay!
Came
Thank
through?
you.
Yeah.
I could see the body language.
Okay, I
but
can't hear you now. Jeez, what the hell's going on?
Selectman Ray said yes. Selectman Barnett Parker. There you are. Hello.
Technical difficulties.
Yes. We're voting on entering into the public meeting. What's your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. The motion passes. We are now in the public hearing. And so if with the board's consensus, I think I would like to ask our town administrator to run through the articles with any brief explanations. And if there are questions from the public, we can proceed along with those. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah, it does.
All right, David, you're up.
Okay, I'll do the annual town meeting first and the special town meeting regarding the Lincolnville Central School budget second. The referendum is the first article on the town meeting warrant is the election of a moderator, and the second are the secret ballot referendum elections for the elected positions, selectmen, the budget committee and the like. So those aren't subject to the public hearing tonight. So it starts with Article 3, which reads, to see if the town will vote to carry forward the unexpended balances in the following accounts for the ensuing fiscal year: McGuntacook Dams, Norton Pond Water Study, LaSalle Cemetery, Town Dog Account / Late Dog Fees, State Plumbing Permit Fees, and Conservation Commission Grants. The Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee both recommend approval. Article 3 is simply, we have some monies in all of these accounts that will be left at the end of the fiscal year, and this would allow these to be carried forward to the upcoming year versus rolling into unassigned fund balance, primarily because, well, in the case of the dog accounts and the state plumbing permit fees, those are monies that statutorily we need to pay or retain available to us. Conservation Commission grants are grants that the Conservation Commission received previously, and donations that they'd received previously that didn't seem appropriate to roll into unassigned fund balance. And the other three are basically for projects that are not complete, so they just roll into the next year. for things that we may need in the future. Happy to try to answer any questions of the public or the board on that, if any is desired. May just note, people at home, I see there's a few that are here attendees. I think they're all likely here for other items, but certainly if you use the little raise hand feature or type on the chat down below, we'll keep an eye out for you as we move forward. And certainly if we need to backtrack, we can too, but I'll move on to Article 4 to see if the sum will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,265,498 for the town of Lincolnville fiscal year 2022 municipal budget as detailed below. Administration and finance account, $567,051. Protection, $268,173. Town office account, $35,674. Contingency, $10,000. Code enforcement, $49,202. Assessing, $38,950. Public works, $1,019,932. Boards and committees, $10,713. Municipal support, $21,060. Provider agencies, $8,126. Capital improvement account, $178,250. Debt service account, $58,367 for a total of $2,265,498. The budget is available for review and inspection here at the town clerk's office and will be available at town meeting on election day. The Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee both recommend approval. That is in essence all of the expenses that the Board of Selectmen will be authorized to expend in the coming year for the various accounts so broken out, and I won't bother to read them again. Seeing no hands, I'll read on to Article 5 to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $1,356,400 from revenues and unassigned fund balance to reduce the property tax commitment for fiscal year 2022. Boat excise, $5,000. Vehicle excise tax, $500,000. Local road assistance, $48,400. Unassigned fund balance, $600,000. Municipal revenue sharing, $193,000. Harbor fees and donations, $10,000, for a total of $1,356,400. Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee both recommend approval. And for by way of explanation, this is revenues beyond non-property tax dollars that the town receives in other fashions besides property taxes dollars that we use to reduce the $2 million that was appropriated in the previous article, so we don't send out as big as property tax bills. Don't see any hands, don't see anything in the chat. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to appropriate all of the money received from the state for snowmobile registrations to go to the Lincolnville Mountain Goat Snowmobile Club for the purpose of maintaining the snowmobile trails and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into an agreement with the club under such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen deems advisable for that purpose. That is recommended by both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. I think that's probably self-explanatory. Seeing none, no questions. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen and Treasurer on behalf of the town to accept gifts, real estate, and certain funds that may be given to the town during the upcoming fiscal year. The Board of Selectmen recommend approval. I think that's also pretty self-explanatory. No hands. Keep going. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen and Treasurer on behalf of the town to apply for and accept state and federal grants and grants from nonprofit organizations, donations or other revenues on behalf of the town for municipal purposes, including, when necessary, the authority to sign grant contracts, documents, and or other paperwork and accept the conditions that accompany grant funds, and to appropriate and expend grant funds and or other funds for authorized purposes as the Board of Selectmen deems in the best interest of the town during the upcoming fiscal year. Board of Selectmen recommend approval. That article was simply authorizes the selectmen to apply for grants, accept grants, and the conditions that are associated with it, and to expend money, those monies for those purposes and no others. So if you didn't have that article and somebody offered you a big grant for something, you'd have to go to town meeting to get approval to accept it and expend the funds. No questions. Moving on to Article 9. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply alone or with the town of Northport for the exclusive rights to take alewives and blueback herring from the Duck Trap River and all its tributaries in Lincolnville during the upcoming fiscal year, and further direct the Board of Selectmen to inform the Commissioner of the Department of Marine Resources that the town wishes to close the Duck Trap River and all its tributaries to the taking of alewives and blueback herring for the season. Board of Selectmen recommend approval. That too is probably likely self-explanatory, except for the part about closing to the taking of alewives and blueback herring. That has been done in the past for conservation purposes. The folks from the Marine Resources came and made a presentation a number of years ago about how much larger that fishery could be and remain, and their recommendation to the town at the time was that we continue to close the resource. And we do apply in conjunction with the town of we can apply in conjunction with the town of Northport, because we share Pitcher Pond and Knights Pond with the town of Northport, and so they have some rights regarding that resource as well. No hands on the thing. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to fix the annual rate of interest at 6% for payment of taxes after the semi-annual property tax installment dates for the upcoming fiscal year, real and personal property taxes. Board of Selectmen recommend approval. That article, after the due date, we begin to charge interest on late taxes as an incentive for people to pay taxes on time. No hands. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to fix the annual rate of interest at 2% to be paid by the town for abated taxes that had previously been paid. Board of Selectmen recommend approval. If somebody pays their taxes and they were too much and the Board of Selectmen grant an abatement back to that person, we pay interest back to that person at a lower rate than we charge people for being late. No question. Moving on. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to authorize the tax collector to accept prepayment of property taxes with no interest to be paid on the same. That just authorized yours truly as tax collector to accept payments from property tax owners in advance, and then not to pay interest for that money, depending on how quickly or soon they pay it. And looking, no questions. Article 13, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to make final determinations after notice and hearing regarding the winter closing of roads in accordance with Title 23 MRSA Section 2953 Sub 3, and final determinations after notice and hearing to annul, alter, or modify such orders in accordance with Title 23 MRSA Section 4953 Sub 4. Such determination shall not require a vote by the legislative body of the town. Board of Selectmen recommend approval. Simply stated, there's one road that we closed to winter maintenance. That's a portion of the Martin Corner Road. And this authorizes the selectmen to do that without having to go back to a special town meeting or town meeting to make that determination. Otherwise, it's reserved in the law for town meeting to do. No questions. Article 14, to see if the town will vote to authorize the payment of tax abatements approved by the Board of Selectmen / assessors from the property tax overlay, or if necessary, from unassigned fund balance. Board of Selectmen recommendation is approval. At times, we have errors or mistakes in the property tax record, and the Board of Selectmen are authorized, or the Board of Assessors, depending on the timing, are authorized to grant property tax abatements. If we do so, we have to pay for that somehow. We can take that by this article out of tax overlay, which is the rounding that is done to the property tax rate, or from unassigned fund balance if there's a necessity to do that. Otherwise, we'd have to budget monies for it, and we don't grant a lot of abatements, but if something came up, you have to have the money to pay it.
David, I think,
And Article,
David, I think I saw Kern had his hand up.
oh,
for the
Yeah, back
previous-
to Article 13, I just want to clarify in the second part of that, alter or modify such orders in accordance with 23 MRSA 29534. I think you said 4953. I just want to clarify that, just to make sure.
thank you, sorry.
It's all right,
Just-
no big deal.
And the last article on the annual town meeting warrant is to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to dispose of town-owned personal property with a value in its judgment of $5,000 or less under such terms and conditions as it deems advisable. That's recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Personal property, well, we had a couple here that were just approved at a special town meeting, such as the lawn tractor. No, that's probably not a good example because we had to go back to town meeting, but something of lesser value. If we didn't have this article, you'd either have to have a special town meeting or wait to a subsequent year to get approval of the voters to sell it. This just allows us to, keep the yard clean and move things on while it's still in good working order. And certainly you can go back to town meeting for something that's worth more than $5,000 and ask for approval to dispose of. Whew. Any other questions on the annual town meeting warrant? Otherwise, I'll move to the special town meeting warrant. That too will be voted on Tuesday, June 8th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the gymnasium of the Lincolnville Central School. And I'll also note that absentee ballots are available right now, well, during normal business hours. And this is regarding the Lincolnville Central School budget. Article 1, school budget. Shall the town vote to appropriate the sum of $3,699,521 and raise the sum of $3,366,030.94 for the 21-22 school budget? School committee and budget committee both recommend a yes vote. Do you want me to read the explanation or voter information? Anyone? No. Okay. Just for people's general knowledge about these types of questions, this is a good one to stop on. Appropriate will give in this article, it talks about appropriating nearly $3.7 million. That means the school committee will have the authority to expend $3.7 million. Raise the sum of $3,366,000. Raise means tax, via property tax. Just in case there's some question about why there's one that says appropriate and one that says raise. Elsewhere, they get other revenues to make up the difference between the two. There. Article 2, shall the school committee be authorized to expend up to $40,680 from the Special Education Reserve Fund to pay for out-of-district tuition costs in the 2021-2022 fiscal year? School committee and budget committee recommends a yes vote. And the
Is there
last,
more to that one? Sorry.
whoops,
I know this isn't a section for clarification, but is there a very short way you could explain that, the appropriation of the funds for the special education for that, or is that a whole, would that be a long thing?
I'll try.
You don't have to,
I don't do schools, but I can I'll do my best. And if that's not good enough, we can find you an answer from somebody on the school committee or the superintendent. The school has a special education reserve fund, which In past years, they've had some appropriations too from the voters for monies. This year, they're looking to expend it for out of district, means they have a student that will be educated outside of the district, oftentimes a special needs student, and they'll look to expend up to $40,680 out of that fund for that child's, or it may be potentially more than one, I don't know the answer to that, for that person's education.
And again, very quickly, so it's not using special education money for non-special education. It's just using it for someone who's not in the district.
Correct, but it's likely a special education student that has requires services that we don't offer here at the Lincolnville Central School.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, most welcome. And Article 3 is, shall the town transfer the balance of any remaining funds from the Lincolnville Central Schools unassigned fund balance as determined by the fiscal year 21 audit to the Lincolnville Central Schools Facility Reserve Fund. Both the school committee and the budget committee recommend a yes vote. No hands.
Oh, Kurt.
Muted.
Muted again, my wife. Listen, I don't have any questions on this, but I know I just want to make note that, or make a verbal note that this is an area of our town budget that we have no say over that. The Board of Selectmen has no say over it. We look at it, we talk about it, and then we move it on. This is an area for the taxpayers of the town of Lincolnville to get involved, look at it, ask questions about where all this is going and why. We have a very nice school, and we've got some of the best teachers that we could ever imagine. But this is an area that needs to be looked at. I look at some of the things, and maybe it's because I don't understand them, although I think I do, and some of the processes, and I think there just needs to be questions asked. So I would really like to charge the taxpayers of the town of Lincolnville to pay more attention to the school and the inner workings and the budgetary process and how these decisions are made. We need to keep this school and be a leader like we have been in the past. But in order to do that, we need to afford to live here. All of us, all of the taxpayers. So my wish is for the taxpayers to get involved at the school level and simply ask questions, participate in the meetings. And if you do have questions and don't really want to step up, then get somebody that can. I feel that is a must in this little town. That's all I've got.
Okay. I think that's it. And David, you're all done. Thank you for using up valuable oxygen to explain that. And it's certainly important that we provide this opportunity in lieu of our annual town meeting, where we could have dialogue and discourse about our lengthy process and thought that goes into at least our portion of the budget that was presented here tonight. So if there is no input from the public, I will entertain a motion, please.
I move that the board close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Lee, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. The public hearing is now closed. Thank you all very much for that.
Yep.
And let's get back to our regularly scheduled agenda. Selectman Garrettson, would you care to read the quote of the evening, please?
Sure. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. Audrey Hepburn.
I like that.
Thank
Like
you.
that.
You're welcome.
Very timely, appropriate. And David, do we have any input from the public for the Citizens Forum for any non-agenda items?
Not for Citizens Forum, but we did have some input on agenda item 10, and you're not going to let me forget when we get there.
Nope, I've got it queued up. I will not forget. Okay, so if there is no one who wishes to speak for any non-agenda items, we will move along to the administrator's report, please.
Just for a reminder for people, if you've been relying on the governor's extension for your dog licenses, that is going to end on June 2nd. To avoid the late fee, get your dog's license now. Our surplus equipment was approved for the selectmen to sell. Those items have been put out to bid along with other outstanding items we've had around for a while that the board had previously approved. Bids are due back day after town meeting, so June 9th, and they'll be on your next agenda. Absentee ballots are available now or during normal business hours at the town office. You can come in and pick one up, vote here, or take it with you, or if you call, we'll mail you one. Again, those will be due back by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, June 8th. The paving work that was left over from last year has been completed. We still have the shoulder work to do, but they came, they saw, they conquered, and did a good job for us, I believe. And the town report is at the printers being printed, and the board wishes to do a presentation. I would think we'd have them back probably Wednesday of next week. In the past, the board's gone and or as many board members as possible have gone and presented that to the person that it's dedicated to before we release it out to the public. I can keep you posted on that. That's all I have tonight beyond the agenda.
Okay, great. Any questions for David on that? Yeah, Kern.
So the paving, I did go around and look at the paving, and it does look good. How does that coincide with what we've got going on this year, David? And forgive me if I am forgetful as to who we awarded the contract to for this year. Was it the same paving company?
No, we have not done it for this year, and actually we've had some, not we, the board, but we've had some internal discussions about the possibility of having the public facilities director prepare the next bid contract and actually do it in over the winter in time for spring of next year. What we seem to be finding in conversations with some of the other managers and administrators is that when we wait till town meeting approves it in June and we put it out to bid, a lot of the contractors are busy and booked, and then the prices either are, I don't want to say inflated, but inflated, go up due to the scarcity of time. And then we're always seem to be racing the winter, and it may be in our best interest to postpone the bidding of it until winter when people are looking for work in the spring. Okay. And then we have a better weather window within which to get the work done. So okay. We have not put it out to bid for this current year. We will, or this upcoming budget year, where, if memory serves me, we were going to resurface the Duck Trap Road and Howe Point, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
Everybody?
Great. Any other questions on the administrator's report? Seeing none, let's move along to upcoming meetings and announcements.
All meetings are remote unless announced otherwise. Lakes and Ponds Committee is meeting Tuesday, May 25th, 7 p.m. Planning Board meets Wednesday, May 26th, 7 p.m. The town office will be closed in observance of Memorial Day on Monday, May 31st. The regional elected officials clean energy discussion will continue on Wednesday, June 2nd, 6 p.m. Recreation Commission is scheduled to meet Thursday, June 3rd at 5:30 p.m. To be determined, they may meet outside or remotely. Please call the town office for more when we get closer. School Committee, Monday, June 7th, 6 p.m. Town meeting and elections will be conducted on Tuesday, June 8th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Lincolnville Central School Gym. It's important to note that the school is not exempt, or people entering the school are required to wear masks by the governor's orders. So we'll be anticipating that people coming to elections will bring their mask with them. We'll have masks available if you don't have it with you and wish to vote. Planning Board is scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, June 9th, 7 p.m. And the Board of Selectmen meet next on Monday, June 14th, 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any upcoming community events anyone wishes to share? Not seeing anything. Let's move along to the meeting minutes from the 10th of May. Are there any corrections or amendments that anyone noticed? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve the May 10th, 2021 meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. And David is going to do his administrative switching and inviting and moving over because we have a representative here from the DOT. We'll recall from our April 26th meeting that we had a conversation with a community member to discuss the concept of a sidewalk here in the center, of which the board was interested in continuing that conversation and wanted to have a representative from the DOT here to talk with us. So I will ask first if our town administrator has anything he wishes to add.
No, you did that very nicely, and would like to make sure to extend our thanks to Patrick Adams from Maine Department of Transportation, an active transportation planner who willingly agreed to join us tonight. And then we put a public hearing ahead of him and made him stick around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, sorry about that, but welcome, please. And you have the floor.
Well, thank you all very much for inviting me to join you this evening. As David said, my name is Patrick Adams. I am Maine DOT's active transportation planner. I deal with all things bike and ped for the state. I work with communities throughout the state on improving the walkability and bikeability of their communities. I provide technical assistance to communities. I work with them to address safety issues and concerns, as well as to help raise awareness about the importance and value of having walkable communities. David had reached out to me maybe a month ago at this point in time to come in and talk to you about, excuse me, the potential of new sidewalks and rehabilitating some of the sidewalks and pedestrian crossings in town. Unfortunately, during the changeover, Chair, I missed a lot of what you were saying, so if you could refresh my memory on some of the specifics.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. I never know when the digital switchover happens. So we have a resident, a community member who lives very close to the town office, come to the board and really is looking for the town to install sidewalks right here in the center, from the school to the library. And, you know, largely, as I'm sure you're intimately familiar with the traffic patterns here on,
Mhm.
you know, the state roads, and the amount of elderly community members that we have, children who are both biking and walking. And it's not the first time we've had this conversation, but you know, it's always important whenever we have a community member come to us with a legitimate concern that we tap all of the experts that we can to give us all of the information that we need to make the best decisions for our community. And so that's largely where we are right now, is having this concept and the desire by quite a few folks in our community, but specifically, you know, right here in the neighborhood of being right in town, close to the school and the town office.
I might just chime in for Patrick's benefit.
Yep.
The request from the resident a month or so ago was to go from the school down to the intersection of 235 and 52, and then down to the library.
Yep.
Which is probably all told 3,000 feet, maybe a little bit more. And our 2006 comprehensive plan had looked at going from the town office to the same intersection, and then from the community center to Park, which is beyond the library. So really the total from back in 06 on the comprehensive plan was about 4,200 feet, which is a pretty good sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay. So the safety data, both in Maine and nationally, very clearly demonstrates that the inclusion of pedestrian facilities in communities, especially rural communities, really does support pedestrian safety. As I'm sure I don't need to tell most of you, many of our roads, especially as we get off the main thoroughfares onto some of those side roads, the shoulders are very narrow, if there are any shoulders at all, and it becomes very especially in situations where vehicles are meeting and areas where you may have people walking or riding bikes, it becomes very it's uncomfortable for people who are walking on the roads. It's uncomfortable for people who are on bikes. And the inclusion of a formal sidewalk really does improve safety. It improves individuals' willingness to utilize facilities. People, if we provide them with sidewalks, people are more likely to go out and walk. They may do it for recreation. They may do it for transportation. They may do it as a social activity. In communities that invest in pedestrian infrastructure, we also see economic growth that stems from that, because people are out more, they're engaging, they're meeting their neighbors, they're visiting local businesses. It doesn't come without a price, however. Maine DOT does have a funding program. We use federal funding, and we work with local communities to develop pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. The grant program that I manage is an 80-20 program. So federally, we cover 80% of the project costs. Local or non-federal participation is 20%. based upon existing market conditions to go from the very start of planning through to the completion of construction. We are seeing approximately $300 to $310 per linear foot for sidewalk construction. And that sidewalk is a 5-foot wide paved sidewalk. That does not take into consideration complicating factors such as tight right-of-way or challenging construction conditions such as ledge or something like that.
Can I just very quickly, is that 5-foot width, is that the mandatory width for ADA compliance?
As of today, that is currently the minimum width. There is a proposal for new federal standards that have been under consideration for several years that would move that up to a 6-foot width. But right now it is 5. Adding another foot really doesn't substantially change that linear price. One of the things that we encourage communities to think about is what are you really hoping to accomplish? What's your purpose? In a situation like this, we are really talking about safety issues. We're also talking about connectivity for school-age population, which are both very meaningful to many residents within a community. What could potentially assist with this project, if you were interested, is the potential of breaking it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. And instead of doing it as one large project, doing it maybe as 2 smaller projects. Unfortunately, because of limited funding that I have available, we do cap our projects at $500,000. So at $500,000, 80-20 would be $400,000 federal share, $100,000 local share. If you have a project that costs more than $500,000, it would be a local contribution to make up that difference. So in other words, if you had a project that was $600,000, I'm capped at the $400,000 as my contribution, and the local piece would be $200,000. That's another advantage to breaking it up into smaller pieces. So if we look at that 300 linear foot piece that you estimated earlier, we're looking at about a $900,000 project.
Yeah.
So if I put in my $400,000, that would leave a balance of $500,000 as a local share. But if we broke this up into 2 phases, if we're lucky enough to be able to divide it equally in half, that'd be $450,000 each project. And it would be $90,000 local share for each segment. So, and $360,000 for the federal. So it'd be $180,000 local cost share versus $500,000. So you'd save more than half. It'd be about half the price. As part of this process, usually what I do is I meet with community members, municipal leadership, usually the city manager, public works, representatives from the select board or town councils. We do a site walk of the area to evaluate existing conditions, identify some of the challenges that may be out there, and also identify alternatives that could be considered. Those alternatives could raise the cost, they could lower the cost.
Patrick, I just want to interrupt for a moment because I do see one of our attendees has their hand raised with a question. And so I think just for anyone watching right now, we'll get through this initial part of the conversation and then we'll open it up to any attendees that may have questions. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you. Sorry, Patrick, continue.
No, that's pretty much all I have as a big global generalized statement. If this was something you were interested in, right now our application window for this year closes on July 15th. We review our applicants and score them, and the application process by federal guidelines is required to be a competitive process. Maine DOT's top 2 priorities are addressing safe routes to school, which is access for K-8 students between home, school, and before and after school activities. That's our number 1 priority. Number 2 priority is pedestrian safety. So this project actually sits pretty well in those priority schemes. We make announcements of award in January, maybe early February each year to those communities. We fund initially just the preliminary design and some right of way so that we can get a better handle on what the true estimated cost to construct the project would be. If the town still wants to move forward, that's when we start moving deeper into the design process. But that would give you a more concrete estimate as to what the scope and cost for the project might be. If you are selected, as I said, notification comes end of January, 1st of February. We still have paperwork we need to do with the feds, and realistically, most times we're able to begin working on the project in either April or May. Generally speaking, because it is a federal process, there are lots of regulations and requirements that we have to follow throughout the design and construction process, as well as the right-of-way process. We usually plan approximately 3 years out for construction. So if you applied this year, which is 2021, you'd receive notification in early 2022. Construction would be sometime, we target 2024. The right-of-way process itself takes approximately 1 year. Questions or areas that you want me to go into greater detail?
Yeah, questions from the board.
Yes. Yeah, Patrick, thanks for coming. Hey, tell me if I'm wrong. I was under the impression that to qualify for sidewalk, DOT sidewalk, you needed anchors, that is points A, point B destinations that were used by the public. Is that correct?
So you have to have what are called logical starting points and ending points.
Okay.
That could be either destinations, it could be intersections.
Okay.
But that's part of what we look at when we go out and do that site visit. What we want to avoid is having situations where we construct a facility that doesn't meet the community's needs, that is incomplete, or is what I frequently call an island out there.
Okay, thank you.
Jordan, you had a question?
Yeah. So in that very rough estimate per linear foot, is in that figure a rough estimate that includes, and I'm assuming, compensation for property owners that have, through eminent domain, I'm assuming, lost part of their property?
It has a nominal cost for determining that amount, it does not have a substantial compensation. It generally is enough to deal with temporary construction rights, but it usually does not include acquisition costs, so for permanent acquisition. So the temporary rights would be if we might need to ensure that while we're constructing the sidewalk, we don't have people going on private property. It gives us temporary rights. It gives us the opportunity to grade and back slope, to fix driveways, things like that, to do those adjustments. One of the challenges you do face is in communities that are proximately located to the coast, acquisition for right-of-way does tend to be it can potentially be a significant cost.
Thank you.
Other questions? Kern, did you have your hand up? David, you did.
Not being on the board and hearing some of these deadlines, Patrick, is it safe to assume that this is an annual type program where if we didn't think as a community we were prepared for July of 2021, but could, get our ducks in a row for applying in 2022? Do you see this continuing annually, or is this like every 2 years or 5 years? Or?
It's been ongoing for 20 some odd years at least. So if the timeline doesn't fit now, and sometimes for communities, it's partially the process of the application. Sometimes it's a matter of municipalities getting their financial ducks in a row as well. Understand that when it comes to the project, you don't need to have all the funding up front. So it's as we go through this. So that initial phase of design, that's what we'd be looking for a funding contribution from the town on. And as we provide that next estimate on price, that's where we'd know what the additional funding would be needed for right-of-way or construction.
Sure. Yeah, Kern.
Is this funding for sidewalks that are start and end and are parallel to a DOT highway, or can they start and end on a DOT highway but not be parallel with it, meaning go across somebody's land? Is it? I'm wondering if the funding is.
So if I understand what you're saying, I think we've got two different pieces maybe within that question. For this funding, the funding is independent of whether it's a local road or a state road on which the sidewalk is being constructed. So if it's a municipal roadway, we can still use this funding to do those improvements. Second piece, I think what you're talking about would be more of a pathway that would separate itself from the roadway. Mm-hmm. This funding can also support that. The only, what's what I'm looking for? The only limitation that would be there is if you're going to create a facility like that, its purpose has to be tied to a transportation need as opposed to a recreational need.
Okay.
Just because of the type of funding that it is. We have a new pathway that we're constructing in Augusta that starts at the middle school, goes through the woods, and then goes up a side road to the high school. So it's the most direct pathway to get from one location to the other to share resources and facilities. It doesn't have to go along a roadway. The biggest challenge you face are additional challenges in meeting ADA requirements when you depart from the roadway.
Thank you very much.
You're
And
very
Jordan,
welcome.
you had your hand up.
Well, if someone else wanted to ask first, I already had one turn. I can wait to ask if anyone else had.
No, go for it.
So I just very quickly to start the application process. Do we need any type of engineering survey or traffic study?
You do not. You do not.
Any other immediate questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
Well, Patrick, I was just curious, have you ever built sidewalks that weren't made of asphalt, but rather gravel?
Gravel, well, yes. Sometimes gravel, sometimes crushed stone. Generally speaking, without either a concrete or an asphalt surface or like a brick surface, sometimes the challenge can be erosion and wear. Ultimately, the defining factor as to whether a surface is permissible is how traversable it is for individuals in wheelchairs or with walkers.
Okay.
If it's easily compacted and can create an adequate surface, then it's something that can be considered. So it's not automatically excluded. It depends on how on what the specific surface is and how well it's maintained in the end.
Okay. And if it was crushed stone or gravel, would that affect costs in terms of raising it or lowering it?
It probably would lower the initial cost, but increase the routine maintenance cost.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies, Josh, if I missed you.
That's okay.
So if the board is okay with it, I know we had someone who's up, an attendee who had their hand up labeled brown bag host, and I don't know if they still wish to ask a question.
I'll authorize them.
Oh, hands back up. So yes, I'll take that as a yes. So
Do you want them on the screen, or can I just allow them to talk? Is that sufficient?
sure.
Let's try that. Oops, it wants me to promote to a panelist. Here they come. That's Rory.
Hello. Hi, Rory. There. So you are
Muted.
you're on mute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah.
I'm Rory and Seliger, and I live at 555 Hope Road, which is 2 houses over from the school, and I'm in between the school and Main Street. I'm the one that initiated this conversation to have this going. And I just had my question was about, I pretty much get everything that you were saying, but I was wondering why we had to go with a sidewalk that was that wide. I know it's different in Augusta than it is here where we live. And the little hill that we live at the bottom of can be really sketchy, especially because people don't adhere by the speed limit. I have a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I had a 24-year-old who went here too for some of the schooling. And our driveway is just not in a really great spot. I walk up, people are pretty good about seeing us, but even my neighbor, I went around and I had the people that live between the post office and down to the corner where Petunia Pump is, where the 2 streets meet, sign informal petition just to see if people were really interested in this and wanted this in the community. And every one of them said yes. Not all of them have kids. I think it's something that I'm not quite sure why it never happened, but that the community wants. We have more businesses now. We have a general store, we have a library, we also have another business called the Red Cottage. And obviously, if we have a sidewalk, it's going to help the traffic problem. But I'm just wondering why it has to be so big. I went out and measured one side of the road, not the side my house is on, but the other side, and 48 inches I was able to do and measure fine, except there's one spot that had ledge that it would affect by an inch or so. But that's why I was wondering if, is there another alternative, a bike path or something that would just be separate than the road? So when people were walking, they know that they're going to be safe. And literally, if somebody went over it and into it, it would be, it would be something that would, that they'd get in trouble for, basically. So people would be more apt to pay attention to the separation of the two. It just seems to me, I don't know if we need that big of a spot. I just know that between the library or the lake and all the way up to the post office, that's where most of the traffic and people go. I've seen elderly women walk and men walk up to the post office. And the town office is right next to the post office, and lots of kids biking and walking and families walking. Especially, Halloween's one example, but there's many times. So I'm just trying to figure out the other road has more room, the part that goes down to the library than this part where I live. But is there anything we could do that would be less expensive? I heard the option of the gravel and something else. That's great. But if there's something, that we could make smaller so it wouldn't cost the town. I mean, I'd be even willing to try to get some fundraising going together, just so people, that want this, and we can raise some money towards our end. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out a way that it would be great to have in the community. I think it would help many, in many areas. To have it, but if we could do it where it wouldn't cost so much, so people would be more apt to want to put their tax dollars into it. So that was my question, I guess, and concern.
Okay. So ultimately, there are two primary elements that play into it. The first is practicality. That 5-foot width is really the minimum width that it takes for two people to walk side by side comfortably. So anything narrower than that, you tend to either have to walk offset or walk one behind the other. The second element is definitely the most important element. It's the minimum required standard under federal law in order to meet Americans with Disability Act requirements. That 5-foot width is the minimum width where either two wheelchairs can meet, or individuals, like if they have walkers, two walkers, so you have people going in opposite directions. So the width is based actually upon the requirements for the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I'm not saying you couldn't develop some other type of path that could be used that's adjacent to the road. If it doesn't meet that standard, then we wouldn't be able to utilize federal funding for its construction. If it was a formalized pathway that doesn't meet that federal requirement, then it could potentially open the town up to liability for individuals who have disabilities who would not be able to utilize that resource.
Okay, thank
Rory,
you.
Sorry.
Rory, do you have more questions either for the board or for Patrick at this time?
No, is there anything No, I think I'm okay. I wasn't expecting it to be that long of a process, like 3 years and everything. So it was good for me to hear all this, to see everything that goes into it. So that's it, I guess.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks so much for popping in here. And I see that either Cindy or Jim have, or jointly, they they have their hand up. So David, if you want to bring them over, they can ask. All right, Cindy or Jim, you are live.
Great, you got me again.
Okay, hi.
I have a couple of questions for you, David. Thank you for coming, or Patrick, I'm sorry. The way you design, I'm delighted to hear, first of all, that the surface doesn't have to be tar. And one of my questions is, the roads that you or the sidewalks that you design, are they within the right of way of the DOT? Because the front end of the library, for example, is pretty much right at the edge of the right of way. And do you then leave, like, have the 5-foot path and then a green space and then the tarred road? Or is there a way to shrink? I mean, right now there's an 11-foot travel lane, for instance, down Main Street. Could that be made into 10 feet to give a little more space? How does that all sort of work?
Unfortunately, you've asked a question that doesn't have a simple answer. The answer I can provide is it depends. Okay. All those different options that you've talked about are really very site specific and dependent on what the issues are at that particular location. We do everything within our power to stay within existing right-of-way and to minimize the right-of-way impacts. Unfortunately, there are locations, especially in communities that have older homes and older roads, where some of those old homes are right up close to the road, and there isn't a whole lot of additional space between the roadway, the right of way that's there, and the front of the homes or the front of the property. So that would all be dependent on existing conditions. When it comes to the green space between the road and the sidewalk is called an esplanade. And the existence and or width of that esplanade is dependent upon available right-of-way or the amount of right-of-way the town is willing to acquire. The greater that distance, 2 feet is tough, because if you set it back only a couple feet, you're probably looking at sand and salt killing any vegetation, any grass that you have there. The further back from the road you go, the more pleasant walking experience you'll have. So there are benefits there, but it does require additional right-of-way availability. Did that help, Cindy?
It did. It definitely did. I'm just sort of trying to do the math in my head. If there's an 11-foot, it's a 3-rod road, right? And if there's a 11-foot right-of-way and then there's another 16 feet of right-of-way, then that should be enough for both a 5-foot esplanade, say, and a 5-foot sidewalk.
Not all the roadways are 3-rod roads. And the other piece I always caution folks, there is absolutely nothing out there that says that road is in the middle of that right of way.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, all right.
We've seen numerous cases where you may have 10 feet on one side and 4 feet on the other.
Okay.
Karen, you had a comment?
I just have
Question?
a quick question for Patrick. What dictates what side of the road the sidewalk is placed on?
Local preference, right of way availability, drainage concerns. The minute you've got a tree that has a 24, 30-inch diameter that's been there forever, there's some history with it. It's a whole lot of factors.
Okay, thank you.
And Cindy, did you have any more questions for Patrick or for the board at this time?
Thought I did, but I can't remember what it was. So I guess not. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you for joining
Thank
us tonight. And so not seeing anyone else with their hand up at this time, so I'll throw it back to the board. Board, do you have any follow-up questions for Patrick while we have his time? I'm not seeing anyone. Oh, wait. Yep, Mike.
Yes, thank you. Real quickly, Patrick, and this is all speculative. I'm wondering if it would help the town in grants or anything like, because we at one end of the proposed trail end down at the park, the lake, we have a recreational trail on town-owned property that goes from the lake to the back of the school. It's maintained. It's certainly not ADA. It's through the woods. Anyway, would something like that work in our favor in grant applications?
I don't see it as either helping or hindering.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Patrick while we have him? David, anything you think we may have forgotten to ask?
I heard Patrick mention earlier the possibility of either himself or somebody else coming down for a on-site examination. And I think before you allow Patrick to continue with his evening, if you wanted to have that kind of discussion, if you want to move to the next level, just to get some input on that, whether or not we choose to apply within the next 6 weeks is another story, but
and I meet with many towns and talk about the possibilities. Sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it just helps with the planning process to help you get your head wrapped around all the things that need to come into consideration. It's usually just an hour or two of time to go out and walk the site and look things over. Look at what's challenging out there and maybe identify what some other alternatives may be.
I mean, thank you. Certainly the numbers are a little staggering on initial review. However, it's comforting that you indicate that there is a willingness to be flexible in both the scope and the timing of the project. And so, I mean, considering the community interest, I would encourage the board to at least pursue an on-site tour to see both, Patrick, what you think, what might be possible, what various phases might make sense, and then we can apply some practical numbers to it, because I feel like it's also theoretical right now, and there's
Very
kind
much.
of a orbit of ideas and desires around what a sidewalk or pathway in the center look like. So having maybe some more concrete options to pursue might be helpful.
Right. In the interest of full disclosure, what some communities do elect to do is to construct a sidewalk on their own, not going through my program. If you opted to do something like that, you wouldn't need to follow all the same federal requirements. You would only need to follow the municipal requirements. There is a definitive cost savings by not needing to follow federal procedure and only following local ordinance requirements. The disadvantage is the town pays 100% of the cost.
And
But the cost, whether the final cost, let's go back to the $450,000 price tag we talked about, where 90,000 was local share and 360,000 was the federal share. Would you be able to construct 1,500 feet of sidewalk for that 90,000? Probably not. Would it cost 450? It definitely wouldn't. It would be less than that. You would have greater flexibility, less restrictions, but it most likely for a project of this size would result in a higher local cost. I'm not trying to discourage you or encourage you. I'm just trying to put that information out there for you to think about.
yeah, and certainly I would want the board to consider or weigh in with our town attorney, the implications of not having an ADA accessible piece of infrastructure installed in the town. I do see that Cindy has her hand up again. Is everyone okay with her popping back in to ask another question?
Sure.
Okay. David, can you do your magic? And Cindy, you are back with the board. And
Thank you. I remembered the question that I wanted to ask, and it was really about what you've just been asking, but it was also so if we were to sort of proceed towards doing it ourselves, would there be any complications because it's within the DOT's right of way?
Right.
Assuming it becomes in that space.
There would be minimum standards that would need to be incorporated into the design and construction and the process. And it would have to be coordinated through and with our region traffic engineer. But it's a coordination element is the primary piece.
Okay, thank you.
great. Anything else, Cindy?
No, I'm done now. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thanks for popping back in. Great question. Okay, so board members, anything else for Patrick? What are your thoughts on next steps before we release him to his own recognizance?
It's a short trip home for me, though.
Good, good. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, Kern.
Well, I think in lieu of the information that we've gotten here tonight, to satisfy more of the inquiring minds, along with some of the board here, I think it would be in our best interest to have Patrick come back and we go for a walk. Just so that he could see the challenges, the dangers that I see, and maybe we could get some advice or get some ideas, and then go from there. Which way we go, I don't know, but I think we certainly, if we have the preferred professional with us and we get his expert advice, then we know what we're up against.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, Mike, you had a comment.
took the words right out of my mouth, Kern.
I knew it, Mike. I knew it.
So
Shall I work with Patrick to coordinate your schedules and his?
Yes, absolutely.
that sounds great.
So we can not try to avoid 7 people's schedules on a Zoom meeting.
So with the consensus of the board, we'll have the town administrator meet with Patrick and get the sort of first steps and first impressions.
Yeah.
So just as a heads up, if you have too many board members there, it becomes a meeting. So
Oh, yes. Hence having David meet with you.
I always just put that out there because a couple towns have been surprised.
Oh, no. Wonderful. Well, Patrick, we thank you so much for all the time and your patience in getting a little peek into our budget this year.
It's always fascinating to hear what's going on in other communities.
It is. It is.
Well, thank you so much for all of the information, and we will be in touch.
David, I will talk to you later this week.
Thank
If that
you.
works for you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much,
Great
Patrick.
evening,
Thanks,
everyone.
Patrick. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for that conversation. And next on our agenda, we do have a community interest form for the broadband committee. And if anyone would care to make a motion.
I move to appoint Cheryl Nevius to the Broadband Committee as a regular member with a term expiring in June 2021.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Barnett Parker, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes, the motion passes. Thank you, Cheryl, for throwing your hat in the ring. And next up, at our last meeting, we had a brief conversation regarding consumer ownership of electrical delivery systems, the grid. And we got some more information, and I don't know, Josh, if you want to take the floor on this one.
I'll leave it to our guest to share his thoughts first.
Sure.
He's headed your way.
Great. And Andrew, you are live. Well, not live and in person, but you're live. And you have the floor.
Amazing. David, could I ask you to promote Sharon Stas also to panelist? She's going to be doing most of the talking here tonight.
Sure, just take me, there she is. Moment. She's on her way.
Great, great.
Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you both have the floor, so take it away.
All right. If
Would
I
you-
may, how much do you know about the bill that is before the legislature?
Let's assume very little.
Okay.
Ground floor.
I will try to make it brief. You've had a long evening already, and you've got a lot more on your agenda. But LD 1708 is an act to form a consumer-owned utility in the state to purchase the assets of Central Maine Power Company that serves the majority of the state, and Versant, which serves mostly of northern Maine, the counties area, and to take over the operation of their distribution and transmission systems. A lot of people ask what's a consumer-owned utility, and in very, very briefly, there are over 2,000 consumer-owned utilities serving throughout the 49 states of the United States, and I know there's 50. There's one we don't serve, and the 5 territories. About 49 million people. So it's a very large segment of the country is served by a consumer-owned utility. The basic difference is consumer-owned utilities are not for profit. They can borrow money at lower interest rates. The customer comes first. Most of our organization charts show the customer and then an elected board. They might be called commissioners, they might be called trustees, but it's an elected board. and then they hire a superintendent or a general manager or whatever title they choose to run the operation, who in turn then hires all the rest of the folks that have to work there, line workers, billing clerks, what have you. But the two key components are the fact that they are not for profit and they are customer oriented. And certainly in this case, the third, which is very important, is the fact that we have access to lower interest rate financing. I've spent 30 years in the consumer-owned utility business, in two New England states, and was also elected to the board of the American Public Power Association, so had exposure throughout the nation and our territories. So that's why they asked me to try to bring a little information and a little bit of knowledge to you this evening. It is no doubt that our electrical infrastructure needs work. There's no doubt that it's going to need major improvements in order to meet the state's goals of being green, reducing our greenhouse emissions by 80% by 2035, I believe is the last date, and by being net zero by 2045. So whichever path we proceed on, whether it's with the investor-owned utilities, status quo, or making a change, there's going to be a cost to that. What many of us have gotten together and looked at is, how do we control that cost? How do we manage that cost? And how can we best finance that cost? And the conclusion that we came to was that it's much better to have local control, which means not owned by foreign countries. In the case of Versant, Calgary in Canada owns the entire utility that serves many other areas, but also northern Maine. In the case of CMP, it's no longer the CMP that was formed back in 1903, that was like a little Pac-Man gobbling up community owns throughout the state of Maine. It's now 3 or 4 layers, but you get back to Iberdrola and Spanish control, and actually at some point Qatar owns a major portion of the stockholders. So it's a multi-layered, but certainly not a company that's managed even by folks in the United States anymore. We think that kind of management distances the consumers' need and the customers' need from what the utility ought to be serving. We think that it also, because they're for profit, they're trying to look at two masters. They're trying to make a return on investment for their investors. That's part of their mission. People don't put hundreds of thousands of dollars into any utility expecting to get 0% back from it. They expect to get 7, 8, 9, 10, in some cases 11% return on their investments. And we also think that there's a need to be transparent, and these investor-owned companies are not. Their board meetings are closed, their financial statements are closed. You try to get any information out of them and you almost have to take them to court. Whereas with a consumer-owned utility, the board meetings are all open. The records are all transparent from top to bottom. You want to know what some general manager's contract is? That information is available to you. You want to know what their salary is? That information is available to you. You want to know, quote unquote, what profit they're making? Because as a consumer-owned utility, you are allowed to make a margin above your operating costs, but that margin has to be returned into your system, either through investment in your infrastructure or through lower rates to the customer. So that's all very managed and all very spelled out. And this is what 1708 does. It is not a government takeover, and that you'll hear, if you haven't already, you will certainly hear that. And isn't that bad? That's a horrible thing to have the government take over our electric distribution system. Well, the majority of it's already run by two governments. They just happen not to be governments of the United States. But we, more importantly, again, feel that it's the financing end. If you can borrow money at 2 or 3%, and you're talking about borrowing millions of dollars in order to get the grid ready to be zero emissions by 2045. You've got to make a major investment in that infrastructure. You've got to prepare for it to be able to accept renewable energy from a variety of sources, be it solar, be it wind, be it biomass, whatever that's going to be developed. And you have to be able to accept that in a reliable fashion and in a cost-effective fashion. You cannot expect solar people to hook up to your grid at the astronomical prices that they're being asked to do so now, and have it work. So we're very concerned about that. We're concerned about how do we meet our goals? How do we face this climate change in front of us? How do we get greener and protect our environment for those that are going to come after us, and do it as quickly as possible, and yet at the same time as cost effective as we can and as managed as equitably as we can. And we think that that starts with a consumer-owned utility. And I think that's why you have a resolution before you tonight, is to ask you. I haven't seen it, and so I apologize for that. But I know I understand the conversation has been whether or not the board would take any position on such a resolution and support 1708. And I'm here to answer any questions. I can talk about this for hours, but I know you would appreciate it if I didn't. But I am available for questions, and certainly more than willing to come back and meet with you again.
Yeah.
The bill has had a hearing. It had a hearing on May 20th. That's the first hearing that it's had in front of the Utilities and Energy, Utilities and Technology Committee. There were 90 some speakers, I believe. Andrew, correct me if I'm right or wrong here. 13 showed up from Versant and CMP, mostly employees of those companies. Mr. Flynn, who's the president of Versant, David Flanagan, chief executive officer of CMP, and then a variety of paid lobbyists and lawyers of those two companies. And there was one person who's a board member of Versant and a former chairman of the Public Utilities Commission. Other than that, they had no consumer or customer support. They had no business support. And I quite frankly I thought their arguments were weak. There were 80 some speakers in favor of 1708, ranging from a number of environmental groups, a number of citizens, a number of business people, and representative of different associations. The American Public Power Association spoke. There were several businesses there. There was a lawyer from Washington, D.C., who has worked with consumer owns throughout the country. So very, very heavy proponent showing in front of the committee. And we're hoping that that continues for the next 3 weeks going into work session. This will, I think another major point you should know is that the bill contains a very, very important statement, and that is that we're asking the legislature to pass this, to put it out to referendum to the entire state. So every citizen would have the opportunity to vote yes or no on this. And our target is obviously, if it passes the legislature this year, and in fact, let's say when it passes the legislature, it would be on the ballot in November. And that we think is a key component. We're not asking the legislature to do anything other than to make sure that the people of this state get to say what their future might hold for this major, major effort that's going to be coming before us.
Thank you for that. Jordan, you had a question or comment.
Well, I mean, I think it's very important, and I mean, my support is fully behind it. I just, when talking about referendum voting at the state, I can't help but think about the CMP's corridor project, and was hoping that if somehow we were able to pass this, if one of the first things that would happen would be the dismantling and abandonment of that project.
I'm not sure what your question or whether that's a statement, Mr. Barnett Parker. first of all, there's still an opportunity to vote against the corridor. And I would encourage those of you who feel that way to do that. If there are people that are among you or that you know that are borderline, there are lots of resources for them to talk to. That corridor does nothing for the state of Maine, despite all of the misleading ads and the millions of dollars that are being spent on those ads. It's a direct line from Canada to a point in southern Maine that will serve only Massachusetts. There are no sublines off of it to serve any part of the state of Maine, and it does not improve the reliability of the grid here in Maine. So there are good reasons to be against it, and the referendum does have an opportunity to do that. When our bill passes, and when it goes to referendum in November and passes, we anticipate an overwhelmingly positive vote. I have to be honest and say, by the time it got formed and got operational and got through all of the legal hoops, should the referendum on the corridor fail in November of 21, I'm not sure where Pine Tree Power would be to be able to have any effect on that. If it would start immediately, and we know that's just not, I mean, that's impossible. It's going to be too late to do anything about the corridor. What it will do is prevent anything like the corridor from happening again. And that's critical, because there is going to be a lot of building of infrastructure, reconfiguration of infrastructure. Things will need to be considered. Do you have local distribution areas that spin off so that you're not expecting one major transmission line to come through and feed hundreds of customers or thousands of customers or tens of thousands of customers, but you might have segments and that kind of thing, which would reduce clear cutting, would reduce damage to the environment, could be done with renewable energy, could be done with solar arrays and that kind of thing. So the improvements that could be done for transmission in the future are vastly important if 1708 passes. And thank you for your support.
Other questions for Sharon? I have an immediate question. Certainly this bill includes some of the language that maybe was troublesome before regarding the lack of tax revenue and addressing the payments in lieu of taxes. And certainly that's a big question of mine, is how do we protect our taxpayers from future down the road losing that revenue should additional legislation pass? Or
excellent question, excellent concern. And this bill corrects what was not clearly stated in the bill in 2018. This 1708 clearly states that municipalities and cities will be kept whole, and that Pine Tree Power will indeed pay all of the taxes that are currently there and any future similar taxes that would be coming.
And is that specifically in the language?
Yes, it is.
Is it specifically attached to an index so that it, it's not a flat fee, that it would change with, the cost of living, et cetera, towards the towns?
Andrew, Yeah. So that the language in the bill has been updated to reflect ongoing payments in lieu of taxes in perpetuity, as well as the fact that those payments will remain on par with any municipal reappraisals that happen.
Excellent.
So in terms of current property taxes paid by utility companies, if property is reevaluated, as is happening in my city here in South Portland currently, when those reappraisals happen, the new company will be subject to those reappraisals, and payments will, as Sharon said, be kept 100% whole to expectations.
And that I know you can't look into the the magic mirror, the crystal ball, but how do we protect against, the 200th legislature or something like that passing something or changing something that would finagle with that promise?
So my perspective on this is that, the drivers of the Pine Tree Power Company moving beyond the legislature. So the legislature will set up the framework and is in the process of setting up the rules. And then the board, which would be elected by members of the state across the state, all of us would be participants in this election for board members, who would then have that more direct steering capacity over the bylaws of the company, how the company operates, how they contract a private operator, and these things. So every I forget the term limits that's in the bill language, but every set number of years we would be voting on those board members, and those board members is every 7 years. Thanks, Sharon.
6, I think.
6, perfect. So if something was to change in terms of the ways in which the company was structured in a way that was unfavorable towards municipalities, the people of Maine, across Maine, who I'm sure would be very upset about that across the state, would have the opportunity to change the leadership of the company fundamentally, which I think is a really unique opportunity, because currently we have absolutely no say over the leadership of our utility company. We don't know what's happening in their boardroom meetings. We don't know how they're making the decisions that they're making. And we certainly see, as Selectman Barnett Parker brought up, that they're making decisions not in our best interest. So if future leaders of this company were to make decisions that didn't put Mainers' interests first, we would have the opportunity to have a referendum on those decisions by voting them out in coming terms. So that's kind of how I visualize that progression. Sharon, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Well, I think too, there's been a lot of consideration, a lot of thought, a lot of years put into the formation of this bill. And whether you support it or not, this is not something to be taken lightly. And it's not something that's going to get changed by anyone willy-nilly, I don't believe. The Public Utilities Commission is still going to be in place, so there will be rules and regulations and oversight of Pine Tree Power Company. And more importantly, as Andrew has said, we will have that oversight and control, much as we do now with the consumer owns. We have a number of consumer owns already in the state, up in Holton, Eastern Maine Electric Co-op, Madison Electric Works, which is just a little bit north and west of Augusta. The islands have co-ops in various sense of consumer owns, and the Kennebunk Light and Power, which I was general manager of for about 18 years. So we're part of that over 2,000 in the United States. So the foundation is there, the longevity is there, the experience is certainly there. We look at Sacramento Municipal Utility District, for instance, is a consumer-owned utility, and their annual budget for 2020 was $1.8 billion. Shows you how large they are. 2,179 employees. But they are committed to being net zero by 2030. They are committed to, I was impressed to hear one of their board members say, we've got 38% childhood asthma in our district. That's unacceptable. We as a utility need to change that. And that's not what you hear from CMP or from Versant. That's a major mindset and major difference in running a utility. And I think you'll find when you put it in place, it's going to be there to stay.
Thank you. Yeah, Josh.
Hi, Sharon and Andrew, I just wanted to say thank you for coming and speaking to us. I think it's really helpful to hear from both of you who are actively involved in this, and just to gain a better understanding. What I'm most excited about is the fact that, as you said, Sharon, the huge investments that we have to make in the grid coming up, and to be able to borrow at those low rates, meaning that those savings are going to be passed on to us. That alone, to me, makes this an obvious initiative that we should all be supporting. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
And I had a question, jumping off of your statement, Josh, is where can I find information on like the total projected cost of the, what we're looking at in terms of the scope of the total financial scope, and then the proposed, how does that shake down to the consumer? What does it look like on our monthly bills? What percentage of the payoff of the project versus the actual covering of the utility itself, fees, that kind of thing? How is there a proposal for that?
I'm not sure that anyone has broken it down to individual bills, but I can tell you, and Andrew, I need your assistance. One real read is Richard Silkman's book, and could you give me the title of that, please, Andrew? While you're looking that up,
Yeah, hold on.
In addition to that, when this bill was first when the predecessor to the current bill was introduced in 2018, the legislature mandated that there be a study done, and over $500,000 was spent to hire an independent firm, which was London Economics, and they produced a report that's over 100 pages long, but has a lot of financial information in it, which, among other things, said it is very constitutional, number one, to do this, and number two, that there will be a overtime savings to the residents of the state of Maine, and therefore they supported what the bill sponsors have been saying all along. You can also go to the Our Power, OURPOWER, and you will find some charts on that website. It's ourpowermaine.org is the website, and you will find charts there that show you the investment that needs to be made, the savings that will be had, and we're talking about a savings of anywhere from I think the lowest analysis that I've seen has said if you switch to a consumer-owned, it's in the $4 billion area, up, and it's as high as Richard Silkman projects $9 billion, and there are some that are saying it's more like 11. So wide range there, but savings nonetheless, and billions of dollars, not millions.
And the book Sharon was just referencing is called The New Energy Policy Direction for Maine. And Richard Silkman he's a Southern Maine-based economist, quite celebrated economist in his field. And I think so essentially, in terms of how it trickles down to the consumer, while the bill guarantees rate cuts of some degree, what it ultimately ends up being will be up to the board how low they want to make the rates. And that is, of course, a balancing act between, well, how much investment is needed at any given year, and how much, it's really just a question of context and the situation that the utility finds itself in. But lower rates are a guarantee. How much lower is up to the discretion of the people that we vote into the board positions.
When the Long Island Power Authority was formed, their board decided right off the bat to guarantee a 20% decrease in their customers' bills. They thought it was that important to show that soon the difference between an investor-owned and a consumer-owned utility. That doesn't mean that that's what the Board of Pine Tree Power will do. They're going to have to look at the investment in the grid that's going to be needed and benchmark those against it. But they're committed to having to show savings to the customer. That's part of the legislation.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and I guess that was one of my questions, is how do we safeguard against political pressure for any given term of of the makeup of the board for political pressure to have lower rates versus the requirement of investment going into the future, or at least initially. And of course, we all kind of face that in our roles here, but.
Exactly. And the mantra for a consumer-owned utility is the best possible service at the lowest possible cost. And that's the mission. So it's truly what you do every month at your meetings and do every day when you're getting prepared for your meetings, is that balancing act of what can we provide, how much can our mill rate go up for us to provide that, and how much do we balance that against what our taxpayers can afford.
Yeah, certainly. Any other? Yep, Jordan.
Yeah, just quickly, since we're talking about potential, worrying about potential costs to taxpayers, which all the consumers arguably of CMP are main taxpayers. Just Sharon, do you have any idea in the last few years how many hundreds of millions of dollars CMP has been authorized by the MPUC to charge its customers and main taxpayers for storm damage?
I don't, but that's an excellent question, because that's been a major expense. And arguably, the question is sometimes you ask why. And a lot of us feel that that's because the system hasn't been maintained appropriately. And every storm, when you think of the overtime that's invested in that and the materials, it is terribly, terribly expensive. They went for a 10.5% rate increase was their last increase. So look at it that way. And yet they're still able to send $180 million of profit to Spain at the end of the year. And that's our money.
Yeah, I think we're currently faced with a utility company that doesn't really understand the concept of preventative maintenance and would rather fix it when it's broken, which also for us tends to be when it's cold out, when it's windy out, and when Mainers are in the most precarious situations. So I think changing the structure of the utility to prioritize needs moving forward and to be more forward-looking and thoughtful in that way, that changes the incentive structure significantly from what we have right now.
And that just makes me think about line workers working overtime in those cold, dangerous conditions without preventative maintenance. They're out there in harm's way, trying to get power up as fast as possible. But
right,
yeah, that's not good either.
And I think there are protections too, just as look at your own positions. The board will rotate. They have 6-year terms. And so I have not committed to memory how they're going to be set. And in fact, I think they aren't set by the legislation, other than that what it says is that the first meeting of the board will determine terms so that you can't have your board turnover all at the same time. So out of the 7 members, the first one's elected, someone will have a 2-year term, someone will have a 3-year term, some will have a 5, some will have this, some will have, and that, so that guarantees a rotation. And they can re-up, as I assume you can for your position. But if you aren't acting in the best interest of those who are going to vote for you, you're not going to get reelected. And that's going to be a major change from what the current status quo is. You read in the paper every day of the hundreds of thousands of customers that are upset with CMP. You read about the 100,000 people that got bills that were so outrageous that it was unconscionable. You read the stories of I heard one man tell me that, he, because of the $4,000 electrical bill, his company went bankrupt. His wife divorced him. This man, and he's still trying to make payment arrangements because he's being told he used that much electricity. Those kinds of things are not recoverable, and there's no avenue for that. God forbid that should ever happen again anywhere else. It just, I can almost guarantee it would not happen in any consumer-owned utility. But should anything like that happen, the electric has, the folks have the right to change that direction. They vote you out of office. So you don't allow that kind of thing to go on. It's just unconscionable.
Any other questions for either Andrew or Sharon at this time? I'm not seeing anyone jumping up and down. Do either or both of you have anything else you wish to say to the board or the people watching?
I'm happy to share my information with you in terms of an email address, or if you might like it, or let Andrew get that to you, and be available. Happy to answer any questions, appear anywhere, anytime, if you would like additional information. And I would encourage you, if you do have a resolution, we would certainly appreciate that you would take action on it in the positive. The next 3 weeks are going to be critical while this bill is under work session, and the more support we can have, the better off we're going to be to get this done.
Great.
Yeah, I would just like to echo that, and yeah, I will definitely share both of our information with you all through David Kinney. And yeah, really appreciate your time and appreciate the really probing questions. It's really great.
Thanks so much for allowing us to be with you this evening.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
thank
your
you.
time, both of
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy your evenings.
Thanks.
So, board, what's next?
Well, I move that the Plainville Board of Selectmen adopt the resolution supporting consumer ownership of our electrical delivery systems, and that upon our signatures, the resolution be shared with our Power Maine and any other interested parties.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Garrettson, seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there any discussion? I guess I just want to, oh, go ahead, Mike, sorry. Oh, you're muted.
You.
There we go. Okay, yeah.
There you are.
Yeah, just now that it's on the table, I just wanted to say that I just wanted to thank Josh for bringing us up and pass it on to Andrew and Sharon as well for filling us in. I was ready to support the resolution last meeting when it was brought up, but I was unsure if I was empowered to do such a thing. David, thanks for getting clarification from the MMA attorney. But the only reason I'm supporting the motion is not because of any animus to CMP Versant, or because I think it's a great idea, which I do, but because I think it will benefit the residents of Lincolnville in a couple of ways. One, I think it's going to lower the cost, and two, I think it's a necessary ingredient in a larger climate action plan that's coming down from Augusta, where the taxpayers of Lincolnville will be perhaps in a better position to receive grant money for mitigation efforts, et cetera, et cetera. Normally, I'm not really a big fan of resolutions from the board because I don't know to what extent they really speak to the people that I voted for me, but in this case I am. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for offering that thought. And I want to echo your sentiments. I am no defender of CMP at all. I have, so we'll just put a pin in that. Less, I am not a defender of CMP, but I have been doing a lot of research and a lot of reading about this, and so I want to separate any of my dissatisfaction, anger, whatever, with CMP and what they are and how they operate, and focus more, just put my bureaucrat hat on and look at the fact that they've made a lot of improvements to the language of this bill. And I know it's still in committee, and I know that they're working on it right now. But I also know that that legal language regarding the payments in lieu of taxes has not been finalized yet. And while there's every assertion that it is going to be favorable for municipalities, and I just feel like I can't completely put aside the concerns of our taxpayers at this meeting right now with 100% confidence. I'm like 98% there, and yet I still don't feel like I have the authority to throw my hat behind this at this meeting. I would like to see what happens in the next couple of weeks and be 100% assured that that language is in there and that it's thoroughly vetted by people who are smarter than I am. Because it's undeniable that if this is successful, it's going to be the best thing for our communities, for our state. But it's just hard. It's hard for me to take off my bureaucrat hat and throw my name on this resolution right now, you know, and I guess I'll ask the same question that I asked at the last meeting is there a rush, you know, what's the rush in terms of having this resolution go out right now at this meeting, or can it wait a couple more weeks so that the committee work has been thoroughly gone through and we you know, those final boxes have been ticked? So that's where I am.
Yeah, well, I for one, I mean, if I'm going to vote for a resolution, which I think is kind of a on shaky ground anyway, municipal governments, I'd rather see consensus among the board in doing that, you know, and if there's no big hurry, yeah, they would like our support, but do they need it in 2 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah. So that's my position.
I think Kern raised his hand.
Yep, Kern.
Yeah, I feel the same way on that. That although I feel that if this is attainable, this is the best thing. I myself have got no love for CMP. It just isn't good. But the other thing that I'd really like to see, and I would think this board would like to see it, and I really don't know if there is a huge hurry here, but I would think the rest of the board would like to see the financial tree breakdown as to cause and effect. I'd really like to see that. If they have that, so they say. I'm going to do a little bit more research. I'm going to read that book. Mark that on the calendar, right? Because I don't read books. I don't. I didn't when I was in school. And there's another piece of information there too, which I would like to see the breakdown. I'm for this. I'm not so sure about Mike. I agree with you on your sentiments on that. I'm not so sure about the resolution right now, but I would like the whole board to get behind that and to do that. I get.
Well, that was a weird.
Yeah, Zoom glitch.
Yeah.
All I got.
Yeah. So anyhow, are we ready to vote? Yeah, Josh.
Thanks. I would urge you all to vote yes right now. And I understand the concerns regarding that language on how municipalities are compensated. But as they said, you know, this is an elected board, and I know no one here is defending CMP, but I want to reiterate, you know, I trust an elected board of Mainers than these corporations that are controlled by foreign entities. This is a resolution. We're not voting on forming this consumer-owned utility. We're simply saying that we support it in principle. I think, this is our second meeting talking about it. I don't really see why we would need to drag this on to a third meeting. And to me, the rush is that anything this big is tenuous politically in terms of having the force behind it. And there's that momentum that we have right now. And as I said, CNP, Versant, they are all gunning for this right now, trying to sway public opinion against it. And I think it's too important for Lincolnville, it's too important for Maine to not be pushing this as hard as we can right now while it's in this work session, while it's being discussed right now in our state and in the country, probably in some news outlets. And the benefits, I mean, the benefits in terms of just accountability, the benefits in terms of the borrowing. I mean, we're going to be borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars, perhaps billions, to make our grid ready for more electric cars and more renewables, a grid that's more decentralized. I just want to share my experience. I testified on one or two bills regarding solar power several years ago, and when CNP was trying to really water down our regulations now regarding solar. We're basically it's a little complicated, it's kind of boring, so I'm not going to explain it in detail, but basically they were standing in the way of fairly compensating people with solar panels on their roof, and that it's just so infuriating. And there was a PUC board there that was saw them favorably, and that has since changed. But we just wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. We could work with the consumer-owned utility, and if we didn't like what they were doing, we just vote them out. And that's just, the benefits are too great, and the real issues that you guys are talking about, I think will be addressed, if not in the language of the bill, simply through voting the bums out of office, as my government teacher said in college, when we don't like what they're doing. And making sure that towns are looked after and fairly compensated. So I would urge you all to vote yes right now.
Well, Josh, final comment. Josh, Layla, and Kern, you all make good points. But I'm going to take a leap of faith and assume that they will iron out the tax implications that Layla, you're concerned with, and just go with the good is better than the perfect right now, because I think there is some urgency, and go with that.
Yeah, Jordan.
Well, and I mean, I appreciate the seriousness that everyone's investing into this, but this is really a broad, general support of an idea. Especially even if we look at the proposed motion, we're not voting on a bill. We're just, and all of you have already agreed that you, in principle, agree with this idea, and that's all this resolution is. So I would prefer not to postpone things. I am more in favor of getting things done, and if you feel reservations, then that I can understand that. But again, you both have already said that you agree with the idea. So really all we're doing is putting that in writing, and which lends support to the movement that they're trying to make right now. So that's how I feel about that.
Okay. Well, it seems like we are ready to vote unless there is further discussion. So Selectman Late, what's your vote?
I'm going to take what Mike said and what Jordan said, and Josh. Josh, you said it. You said it just right. I'm going to vote yes.
Okay. Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
And Selectman Dunn, I am going to abstain for the reasons I previously stated. So thank you all very much. The motion passes. And moving along, David, I think I'm going to hand this over to you. We have a couple of representatives, yes, that are going to come and talk with us about the Lincolnville Fire Department and the beach station.
Yeah, you have one. Unfortunately, I know one of the people in the list, Mike, is likely unable to join us, and Pete's coming over now. And just for a little background, for anybody tuned in, back in 2000, what? Did I write that down in here somewhere? What happened to number 10? Oh, there it is. Back in 2000, there it is. 2013, the town acquired a 3.11 acre parcel of land on the beach road for the purpose of, in the future, constructing a replacement for the beach fire station. The town's been very fortunate since that time to have been the recipient of a fair amount of donated funds from either the Lincolnville Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. or its successor, the Lincolnville Community Foundation, to the point now where we have nearly $300,000 set aside in the fund. And the folks from the fire department came to me or their representatives a couple weeks ago and said, we think it's now time to start doing some planning efforts for the replacement of the beach station. And I said the first stop after meeting with me was to meet with the board, tell you where they are, what they're thinking. And with that, Peter Rollins is here. He's a longtime member of the Lincolnville Fire Department. And I'll hand it over to Peter to tell you what he or they are thinking.
Welcome, Peter.
Hello. Yes, Peter. Hi. So at this point, we want to start the conversation about how we start building a replacement beach station. The current one is too small. The last two trucks that we got do not fit into the current beach station, which means that the next truck that we get will replace the one that currently does fit in the beach station, and we won't have a station for it. So we'd like to start the process, possibly get building in a year, and have the station in service in 2 years. We have the parcel of land. It's I'm not exactly sure what the address is. It's about 330 Beach Road, 331 Beach Road, somewhere around there. So yeah, we just want to start the conversation, how we get going and what we need to do.
Questions for Peter? Yeah, Mike.
Well, yeah, what kind of plans, architectural or feasibility or any of that stuff do you guys have on the books right now, or do you? Yeah.
None. Sketches on a piece of paper.
Essentially,
we're looking at a 2-bay garage with an office and a maintenance room. So it's going to be small. It's nothing like the one at the center.
Okay. Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, David, but first steps would be empowering the board to put out to bid, getting qualified contractors for the design and site work and site plan, because this would require a site plan, yes?
Yeah, ultimately, any project such as this, it will have to comply with our own Lincolnville land use ordinance and require, as a minimum, a approval from the planning board. It's going to require a driveway entrance permit from the Maine Department of Transportation because it's located on State Route 173 or the Beach Road, which is theirs to govern. Obviously, if there are impacts for, things such as wetlands, or any of that type of issue that would have to be addressed. It is doubtful in my mind, not knowing, the details, that we would get to the point where we would have to file a permit with the Maine DEP, just because we're not likely to trigger the threshold for impervious area or wetland impacts here. But certainly, we would, in all likelihood, look to have professional guidance and assistance to make sure we were utilizing the funds that we have in the best possible manner and most efficient manner. And, using either I'll use the most recent, which is the town office. For an example, I don't think we sought necessarily bids, as we sought statement of qualifications, so that, there's many ways to pay. You can pay up front, and it might cost you a little more to do a design, but you save it in the actual design of on the construction and the life cycle of the building itself. But certainly you'd probably need for lack of a better word, a phased approach, so that you could have milestones along the way where you would make decisions to move forward with the next step. You wouldn't just jump into necessarily designing a building without having taken the property survey and do topographical, so any slopes you're dealing with, or wetlands mapping and site distances up and down the road. So there's a fair amount to it, but I think, logically, probably the first step is to solicit design or consultant interest in helping formulate the plan, and also look at, neighbor standards in our land use ordinance to make sure that we're good neighbors to the people next door and across the street and around the corner, while still keeping the public safety aspects in the fore. Did I ramble on long enough on that? I don't know if you'd look to, right now, there's been just a couple of people for the fire department that have been the quote unquote lead people that have, the front team that came to speak with me. I don't know if they'd have, similar to like the truck, if they'd have a building committee themselves, or if it was just the two that came to speak with me. So more than willing to do whatever's necessary to get this started.
So thoughts, questions, concerns from the board? Yeah, Josh.
Yeah. So let me first start by saying, forgive my ignorance, because the beach fire station is something I don't know very much about, and I was glad to finally tour it. I think that was a few months ago with everyone. I was wondering, first off, how far is the beach fire station from the proposed new fire station location?
I don't know for sure. I'd say it's less than 2 miles.
Okay.
It's just past the intersection, Josh, of 173 and where Slab City and Duck Trap kind of all break off. It's just around the corner from that.
Got it. Okay. So
we're just up the hill from Sleepy Hollow.
Quite close. Okay.
Yeah.
And the original reason for the beach fire station, I'm assuming, was to have a truck in a different, I guess, spread the fire trucks around so we could lower response time. Is that correct?
Exactly. We had a house fire a year and a half ago down the Camden Lincolnville town line on Route 1. Mm-hmm. I drove a truck from the center. It took me almost a half hour to get there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the beach truck is the quick response to Route 1, Lincolnville, Camden, Northport. It's also a place where we need to have extrication tools for car accidents because Route 1's a high-speed road.
Okay.
So we definitely need to have a response vehicle down there.
Yeah, the other thing that that comes up periodically, because we get calls here in the town office or emails from insurance carriers about, is the beach fire station still an active station? And I'm certainly not an expert in insurance, but the proximity from a active fire station to your residence or to your business location gives you some advantages in terms of your rates on insurance.
That makes sense. Okay. And then just last question, has the fire department considered renovating the current beach station so it would fit larger fire trucks?
But it's already been renovated once with the taller door, and that's about as tall as it can get. There are other issues with the building too. It's an old building. It's also within the flood zone down there, so it's not an ideal location.
Right. Okay.
Also, pulling out onto Route 1 from there can be quite tricky at times, especially in the summer with traffic. Even with lights and sirens going, people don't usually stop. So it's better if we're in a less traveled area.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board? Not seeing anyone jumping up and down. Peter, what else do you need from us?
I'm guessing just kind of a blessing and a direction. That's really what we're looking for. We do have a building committee.
Okay.
Just it's members of the fire department who weren't on the truck committee because they're a little tired of building things. We've been building a truck for almost 2 years and finally got that in service. So we're giving those guys a break.
Okay. And while I've got you here, and David shared with me a public comment on this agenda item, David, I remembered that we had an email from a butter or neighbor. And I guess, David, you want me to just go ahead and read that email?
If you would, I'm trying to breathe.
Okay. While we hope David doesn't choke, I'm going to read the email from Sandy Lehman. Hi, David. Let's see. Oh, sorry. Representatives. Oh, gosh. There's so many emails attached here. Since I'm unable to watch or attend the meeting on Monday night, Josh suggested that I request that you add my concerns to the agenda for discussion. Please be sure to include that we support the fire department. We would request a different venue for building a new fire station. If that isn't possible, could the surrounding neighbors be included on the planning of the new structure? That would be much appreciated, and I'd be interested to hear the results. And I think that's the majority of it. David, did you have anything else to add?
Excuse me. No, I don't think so. Beyond the obviously the town meeting voting to accept this or to purchase this piece of land for a future fire station back in 2013. And we certainly, with our past projects, have met with neighbors to hear concerns. I know when we built the center fire station, a couple people went and actually spoke individually with neighbors and to try to address any concerns and, minimize impacts. We certainly in our facilities try to be good neighbors, and I think we are. And if we're not, we certainly hear from it. But I think if you went and talked to the neighbors at the existing center station, I don't think anybody would tell you we were a bad neighbor. I hope not. And I certainly think we could add into any request for proposals to prospective consultants that we hold at least, a neighborhood meeting. And in addition, certainly people would be welcome to contribute in a form to the selectmen when plans were presented, or to the planning board when something was reviewed against the land use standards.
Yeah, Josh.
Okay, last question and then a comment. Last question is the current beach fire station. If this new one is built, are there any plans for that building?
Not for us. From what I understand, we were giving it on permanent loan from the French estate as long as it remained a fire station.
Oh, okay.
What happens to it after we abandon it, I don't know. I know there's a lot of entanglement with the town there with power lines and things going out to the beach for the sidewalks and lights. And then again, I don't know how active the French estate is at the moment. So I don't know what will happen to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We certainly have, we certainly have some other utilizations of the beach fire station. Pete alluded to the power for the controller for all the sidewalk lighting comes from that building or exterior of that building. And so we'll have some work to do there as well in terms of what will occur with that spot after. And we did, when we obtained when we put the power there for the beach, for the sidewalk lighting, we did speak with the then owner of the French property to seek permission for that use as well. So we have some overlapping items there.
Okay. And then my comment, my father, I believe, gave a public comment when the original center fire station was being built or proposed, asking that the lights be shielded to not, add light pollution to the sky.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just ask that that be considered for the construction of the new station.
So is it fair to say that we had a hand up. Sorry. From an attendee. Crystal, did you wish to address the board? Is that a yes? Maybe not. So I was going to ask the board, is the consensus that the board is in fact in support? Oh, there's the hand again. Crystal, you are unmuted and you have our attention.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if there is going to be a vote tonight.
There's nothing that we're voting on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, I was going to ask the board. A general consensus of agreement with this concept, and that we are interested in tasking the town administrator with getting the first steps for looking for putting together some contractors for either survey or initial designs that the board can review and vet to get this process started. Am I correct in that assumption or no?
Yes, yes. Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing anyone
No.
waving
No.
angrily or anything like that.
Yeah.
So David, do you need anything other than that consensus from the board at this time?
Nope, I'll get together with Pete and the other members of the building committee, and we'll do some preparatory work regarding requests for design or development or evaluation services, and we'll keep you posted on progress, because ultimately it would be you folks that would make the final, not the final decision, but the decision on moving forward with whoever to assist the fire department in the design, and what the scope of the services would be. So I'm good. I don't think we need anything additional, particularly at this moment.
Okay, and would you just clarify for anyone watching, or just in general for the legislative body of the town, any actual construction of the fire station would require a majority vote by the legislative body?
Yeah, that was, if I don't have the actual article in front of me, but certainly from my memory of reading it last week, any construction of a replacement fire station would have to go to a town meeting vote.
Okay, great. Thank you. Peter, anything else for the board before we send you on your way this evening?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
the time this evening.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Okay,
Good, thanks.
And moving along, we have our broadband update on the agenda. Thank you. We remembered. And there are some communications from Deb Hall that I hope everyone had the chance to read. And so I don't know who wants to take it away first, Josh or Jordan.
I've been offline for like 10 days, so I would say
Yeah,
Jordan is
lucky person, you.
I apologize. But
Jordan, the floor is yours.
So it's been, thankfully, a kind of a calm week or so in the Mid-Coast Coalition. I think they're really preparing heavily for this vote on the interlocal and for that to pass, and on the subsequent steps. I don't know how much of this, there is discussion about first phase towns and what it takes to get into that phase, and rough survey engineering costs that go into that, which is all very, very clearly laid out. But yes, there was not as much activity as there has been in the past few weeks. But I am happy to read or explain anything out of this supplemental information that's in the packet.
Jordan, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe you've got the date. I know that Thomaston is having a public meeting, informational meeting this week. And I plan to attend, but I don't know what the date is. Do you happen to know what the date is?
If you can give me a second to check in my emails.
Well, it says here in our packet, the open house is Thursday, the 27th at 6 p.m.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to read more closely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then the warrant article is on the June 8th ballot for Camden, Rockport, and Thomaston.
Gotcha. Thank you. Yep. Thursday. Thank you.
And so, yeah, just to make sure everyone knows, yeah. So Camden, Rockport, Thomaston are voting to form and the interlocal agreement. Is it South Thomaston that's also voting? But yeah, I don't know if they're June 8th. They may be a different day.
Other questions for Jordan? All right. Anything else, Jordan?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I do see here a proposed communication for Waldo County Commissioners.
Yes. Josh, would you like to speak on this?
Yeah. So, with the ARP funds, all the counties received a certain sum of money. I believe Waldo County received $7-point-something million, and if you broke it down by town and the way it was given to the counties, I believe was by population. Lincolnville's share would be $400-something thousand. And my understanding is with the ARP language, counties can't simply just hand money over to a town. But what I am proposing, we do is write a letter to the Waldo County Commissioners, asking that they when the coalition, when the interlocal agreement is agreed upon and the corporation is formed, if Lincolnville is part of the interlocal agreement, to basically give Lincolnville's share of money to the corporation to fund Lincolnville's, to help fund Lincolnville's build out of a fiber optic system. I don't know if that was clear as mud or not. And perhaps David, if you know more about the interim final rule from Treasury on how ARP funds are spent by counties, because I'm certainly not an expert on that. And I do know that the Southwestern Waldo County Broadband Coalition representatives from that are potentially interested in joining on a letter that we write. Just because, they think, and I think that the county money, if I'm understanding correctly, that they can mainly only spend that on water, sewer, and broadband, of which water and sewer our county doesn't handle. If one major town in the county, Lincolnville, is working on this and the ARP funds expire, why wouldn't they help us fund our build out?
Yeah, Kern.
Josh, how would that work? Because we're going from one county, we're reaping the benefits of county money, but giving it to another. So, or participating in another. And I know that's kind of a touchy situation in some instances. So what's that going to look like? Does that actually come to the town of Lincolnville and then we spend it as we see fit, as long as it fits the criteria of what the money goes for? Or is that something that goes directly to the coalition? How is that going to look?
So the way, David's waving his hand.
No, you can talk. It's your meeting. I'll chime in on what little more I know about the American Recovery Plan when you're ready.
Okay. So my understanding of how this would work, again, if it's allowable, is that the money would be given to the Midcoast Internet Development Corporation once it's formed, earmarked specifically for building out Lincolnville's network, or a share for Lincolnville to buy fiber if we bought LCI's network or something. And so it wouldn't be spent by Camden or Brockport, and it wouldn't be given to any of those towns. It's the Midcoast Internet is kind of interesting because it does cross county lines. But Lincolnville we're such a unique town that technically we are in Waldo County, but culturally, or not even culturally, but we're bound with these other Knox County towns, which is a unique situation.
Thank you.
Jordan, did I see you poking a finger up there?
Oh, it was just very quickly to back up what Josh said, that it's not, that it's going to a municipality that has no geographical borders or boundaries or loyalties. So, but Josh did it very well. Sorry.
So the only criteria would be there's 3 categories it can be spent in, and that's it. Yeah.
Okay, David's shaking his head, so I want to hear it. Yes.
Well, the interim final rule is still interim, and there's a lot of guidance still yet to come, as I understand it. I also understand it that counties in Maine may have received their first half of county monies direct from the feds. I don't understand quite how they send out the money without having the rules formalized, but with the understanding of if you expend it without following the rules, that we haven't told you all the rules yet, you'll be required to pay it back. But certainly in everything interim thus far, water, sewer, and broadband is or are eligible expenses, but there are other things that counties can choose to spend it on, and municipalities will likely be able to do the same thing with any ARP monies coming directly to us, which we have not received any funds. I would certainly suggest, if the board wanted a suggestion, that you at least alert your county commissioners that you are aware that they're getting a substantial sum of monies, and that you'd like to be involved in whatever process they put forward for distribution, so that you can be, invited to have a seat at the table, so that they're not making a decision in a vacuum that might be counter to goals that you might have, or you think the community as a whole might have. Sometimes when bodies don't hear from others, they just make assumptions that they know exactly what ought to be done. But I'd certainly encourage the board to, alert the county commissioners that you are aware that a substantial sum of money is coming, and that you'd like to be involved in a public process to determine how those funds were to be expended.
Yeah, I guess I'm fully on board with the concept that David just proposed. I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't more information in our packet for me to be able to read and digest over the weekend to have a little bit more informed conversation. I'd like to know what the Waldo County Commissioner's position is currently.
Me too.
Yeah, I guess I would just like a little bit more language, or a little bit more information before writing a more specific request / demand. So, but Josh, you had a comment.
Yeah, I think what David just said, I like that idea more than my idea. With the addition of saying, we'd like to be involved with in the conversation of how the county money is spent. One thing we're looking at is broadband, something to that effect. I think that makes more sense than saying, I think you should give this money to this entity that doesn't exist and then do it this way and that way. So at least, just let them be aware. Hey, we know the money's coming. We think broadband may be an idea for us, but we want to have that conversation. And just say something sooner than later, because we don't know what their plans are. They do meet, I think it's bi-monthly, but I haven't seen those minutes online.
Their minutes and agenda are not the clearest of
Okay.
things. There's a lot of executive sessions with no details. So I've been looking. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, a quick question for Ed. Who knows who the the administrator is for Waldo County? David.
Waldo County doesn't have one. It's run by 3 elected members of
Okay,
the Waldo County Commissioners.
Okay, I just assumed that. I know that in Knox County, it's a guy named Andrew Stark, right?
Yeah.
Isn't he
Andrew
the
Hart.
Andy
Hart?
Hart.
Oh, thank you. Yes, close. Okay. There isn't a counterpart to him in Waldo County that we would go
Waldo
through.
County, I believe, is one of 2 counties in Maine that does not have a county administrator. So it's the 3-member Waldo County Commissioners and the county clerk, Barbara Arsenault, who assists them as a instructor.
And Mike, fun fact, if you want to learn more about Waldo County government, I made a documentary called How Waldo County Works. And we follow around Commissioner and still current Waldo County Commissioner Betty Johnson. So if you Google it on YouTube, you can learn all about Waldo County government.
Is this animated by any chance? Or
nope, I follow Betty on her journey through all the different Waldo County buildings.
Yeah. No, thanks.
So
the reason I ask is I was wondering, getting this communication to Waldo County Board, if it's going to go to a person who's going to then have it ready, like Dave has stuff ready for us in this nice organized way. How we tailor our message so that they get it. That's what I'm getting at. If we just
Oh, I
address
think
it to the
we-
board, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think we can write a, if this is a board's choice, we can write a short, succinct letter, acknowledging the fact that we're aware of they're getting funds and we've been studying, looking at options for broadband, as Selectman Garrettson said, and that this board would like to be kept in the loop and involved in the decision-making on how the Waldo County funds are expended.
Okay.
So is there a rapidly approaching deadline, or is this something that David could draft and we can review at our next meeting?
The thing is, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I would assume they're not about to spend a whole bunch of money, but we don't actually know.
Okay.
Well, I personally, I trust David to get that out and word it properly. And I'm sure we'd all be comfortable with it at the next meeting. But if we don't know that there's any like deadline for them giving away all this money, why don't we just have David do a draft and we take a look at it next week?
Well, I guess that my thought is then, we all, as a board, we can have a motion and then all of our signatures can be on it, as opposed to, appointing myself or just, you know what I mean? Process wise, it strikes me better.
Yeah, good point. Sure. Okay.
That sounds good. Also, hopefully we'll know just a little more from Treasury, perhaps, because things will become more clear. So that's always good.
Sure. Jordan, you had your hand up. You still?
It was resolved. I just agree with you, actually, about drafting it, having us look at it, and then acting together. Because it's it's a tame letter, and we're just saying we want to be involved. And if anything, I think just not rushing it, but the sooner we get it in, it's just, have our names up there in their minds, maybe will be a good thing too.
Sure. Great. Okay. Anything else on this? Thank you, Josh and Jordan, for those updates. I'm sure there will be more next time. All right, moving along, we have an application before us by a qualified catering organization for a catered function at the Edge. Do we have a representative, David, or no, we don't? It does not look like we do. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? Yes, Jordan.
Yeah, it's too bad. I was really hoping we were going to have a representative. And I hate to be nitpicky, but it is an application with certain requirements. And the first one, and David may be able to correct me, but with the dancing license, I know that there are, statewide, you are supposed to have some, according to ordinances in towns about having entertainment or music permits. But then that was really a small thing. But in the diagram and the description of the area that's proposed for the licensing, I just found to be undetailed. I know the property, and there is a building and center located on the property, which I don't see in the diagram. And I just don't see any of the descriptors of the three requirements, the outdoor catering restrictions. So those were just a couple of nitpicky issues I had with the application.
I did extend an invitation to the folks from Seacoast Catering to attend. I didn't hear back whether or not they would or plan to. I certainly do not see them in the attendees list and haven't tonight. So I'm not quite sure what to tell you, or besides table it and wait for the next meeting, and I'll remind them of their, if they're interested, they better show up, or we were not going to sign off, I guess.
Well, and if they would, and forgive me if this is totally out of turn, but if they would like to submit a more detailed drawing and description, I find that would be helpful. If they can't make it for some reason, I just, like I said, so.
Yep, I certainly can convey that message. I understand your concerns because four words in the square on half a page is a little.
Little loosey goosey there.
Yeah, well, yeah, Jordan, I hear you. And my concern is about the dancing is, I don't see anything that's telling me that they will or will not have amplified music. And I don't know how loud this thing is going to be. And
We
I'm
don't
not
have
the
a
noise
noise
police,
ordinance.
but I'd like to know if it's going to have amplified music.
I think those are good things, but and maybe we'll talk about this next time, but as some recent events have led me to be informed that Lincolnville does not have a noise
No, we
ordinance.
don't.
So that's why I wasn't even sure if it's required for that in the town to get that entertainment permit. So that was my question, but
Sure. Yeah.
maybe we'll talk about a noise ordinance in the future.
I know that there's not a noise ordinance in town. That was way too complicated at the time. But if it's going to be a public nuisance, there are laws on the books for that. And I'd kind of like, I think it's called a public nuisance, but I'd kind of like to know, I would think the application would tell us if there's going to be amplified music or not.
Well,
just so the neighbors have a heads up that they may want to leave town for that night,
It would be nice if there was an applicant here to explain. This application is not for music or dancing. This is to serve alcohol.
Right. Okay.
This is strictly a procedural element coming from BABLO, the Bureau of Alcohol, Beverage, and Lottery Operations. So, I mean, all of those questions, while they may be relevant, aren't pertinent to us or our process in this conversation. So it's sort of outside our oversight, really here.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Relevant nonetheless, and yet out of turn.
Yeah, especially if you're living next door. Yeah. Okay.
So, and that's where our good neighbor standard comes into play. But anyway, the real question is the board willing to move on this tonight, or do we wish to table it and have the applicant be present to answer, or request that David get in touch with them and have them put forth a plan for the layout that actually represents anything in having to do with reality other than some words in a box, as David said.
Yeah, I would say we table it until we get a diagram at the very least.
Okay. I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll see it next time then. All right, moving along. Prior to acting on this agenda item, we need a motion, please.
I move that we suspend our meeting as the Board of Selectmen and that we convene as the Board of Assessors.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. We are now convened as the Board of Assessors, and David has brought Vern over. And Vern, you are live with us and you're muted.
Thank you.
There you are.
Welcome.
How's that? Thank you.
Great.
Nice to be. So this evening is the opportunity you have to declare your ratio of assessed values to market value and make application to the state of Maine to receive reimbursement for the homestead exemption. There is a reimbursement that does not fully compensate the town for the entire value of the exemption, but for a large portion of it, and we want to make sure we get that. And I will mention it now and again before we leave. This is a time-sensitive document that needs to be filed by June 1st. So if everyone could, or at least 3 of the 5 could hustle in and sign that application in the next day or 2, so Dave could get it in the mail. He has the original and an envelope ready to go. Last year, we met I was still in quarantine in Florida, and we voted to set the ratio last year at 94%. 94% is still within the guidelines as issued by the state, as you can see on the draft form that was, I assume, included in your packet. And I have filled that out because I recommend that you certify the same ratio of 94%. Everybody, I'm sure, is well aware of what's going on in the market. Real estate values, people moving in from away, bidding prices on homes, people paying $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 over ask price, building materials going through the roof, and yet nothing seems to stop this market. And where this merry-go-round stops and when, nobody seems to know. I think it is appropriate for the board, and this is the advice I'm giving to everyone that I work for, that we try to establish as much consistency rather than throwing something new and totally different out to the taxpayers this year. So your signature at 94% would do that. And I did include in my memo to you one of my favorite quotes from the Maine Law Court in a case of Sweet versus Auburn that says you are not obliged to follow the boom times nor the despair of a depression, and that it is important to have some consistency and not wild fluctuations in municipal income. And this would allow us to do both of those things for our taxpayers, as the court many, many years ago instructed assessors to do.
Thank you for that, Vern.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Vern?
Oh, I don't have any questions.
If there are no questions or comments, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the board approve and sign the ratio declaration and reimbursement application as prepared by the assessor's agent.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Ray. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn. My vote is yes, the motion passes. Vern, thank you for being patient.
Glad to do it. Thank you for taking time to meet with me. Don't forget, we
Vern.
need people to rush in and sign that, and you are still in session as Board of Assessors, so you need a
We
motion.
certainly are, and as such, I will entertain a motion now that we have dispatched with that item.
I move.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
thanks. Sorry. I move that we adjourn our meeting as the Board of Assessors and reconvene as the Board of Selectmen.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Barnett Parker, seconded by Selectman Late. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn. My vote is yes. We are reconvened as the Board of Selectmen. Have a great evening, Vern. We have before us draft listing agreements with Camden Coast Real Estate for the 3 town-owned properties located adjacent to the Rosenberg Road. Are there any questions, comments for David on this? David, do you wish to add anything?
No, I think this is fairly self-explanatory with the exception of it didn't yet get the final review back from the town attorney, who wants to make sure that we don't put the wrong type of deed in there. But the real estate agent asked that question, told me to fill it out. So I think it's ready to go. It's the prices that you'd been discussing previously in executive session after reviewing these proposals. So.
Excellent. Does someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board authorize the town administrator to sign the listing agreements with Camden Coast Real Estate for the town-owned parcels adjacent to Rosenberg Road, provided the final agreements are substantially the same as the current drafts after review by the town attorney.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there discussion? Yes, David.
Just one more thing for anybody out there in TV land. We'll soon be listing 2 properties, both with lakefront access on Levenseller Pond. So if you're interested, it'll probably be later this week, but contact Becky Johnson at Camden Coast Real Estate.
Nice pitch, David. If there's no further discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is a yes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. And David, I think I will hand this next agenda item over to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for persevering. And now, before I couldn't breathe, and now I can't breathe through my nose. So if I'm a little stuffy, bear with me. The federal CDC and Maine CDC and Governor Mills have been changing rules and regulations regarding responses to the pandemic fast and furiously. So we have developed a update to the phased reopening plan here at the town office for the board's consideration. In essence, a loosening of the restrictions and some of the challenges for our customers, and yet trying to maintain the health and safety of the community and the staff as our priorities. We would continue with the front office being open to the public for the same hours we've been open for a period of time. We would make the map room that had been previously unavailable available for people to come in and do research. We would not have folks come in what I would call, for lack of a better word, the back offices, in with like code enforcement or finance or the clerks, but rather have those folks come out and if somebody needed a meeting, meet in the small conference room. And certainly if somebody were concerned that they about exposure to anything, we make accommodation for high-risk individuals by calling the town office or emailing us here. We would, following the guidelines on mask wearing or face coverings, right now that's been in essence eliminated, except for in school and healthcare settings. When this was drafted, the guidance wasn't completely clear. So this has been drafted to have people fully vaccinated not be required to wear masks to enter the building. And those that weren't fully vaccinated, in other words, had your vaccine and gone your 2 weeks, to continue to wear face coverings coming into the building. However, not to ask staff to be mask or vaccination police and not inquire of people's vaccination status. We would have any unvaccinated staff continue, or staff that was vaccinated that wished, continue to wear face coverings when not in their private office or assigned workspace. And if a customer asked, that, remember Donna asked that we would put one on without question or on our part, and that we would plan to leave the plexiglass barriers that have been at the customer service areas in place. The other big change would be that board committees and commissions, effective after town meeting, basically after the June 14th or at the June 14th selectmen's meetings, that we would go back to meeting in person versus remote meetings. And with that, I would try to answer questions if there were any, or let you do your thing.
Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns for this plan? Yeah, Mike.
Muted Mike.
Mike, you're muted.
Yeah, God, you guys missed a great opening salvo there. But no, David, yeah, it's speculation maybe, but after town meeting, when we go back to or are allowed to go back to in-person meetings like before, is there just a lot of people have gotten used to the convenience of attending by Zoom. Met last week with somebody at a committee meeting who was in one of the Carolinas, was able to attend because of Zoom. A lot of towns, organizations are going with a hybrid type of approach, right? Where you can have in-person meetings, but some people are able to Zoom in. And still everyone, through the miracle of technology, is able to participate. Anyway, have you as town administrator and the person who knows what's going on in the town office and what technology we have there, given any thought to that possibility of a hybrid type of meeting, should we want to do it down the road?
I would encourage you to pull the trigger one way or the other.
Yeah, okay.
And either continue all Zoom meetings or remote meetings, or to go to in-person. If we had a individual who was a Zoom master, so to speak, that could work it, you might go a hybrid. It's burdensome, to be honest, to set up the meeting and then run it. And if you're going to have somebody running it while you're sitting in a meeting, and I think it's a bit of a challenge, but
yeah, okay.
That's me.
No, I just wanted to get your take on it. Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
I also am concerned about both the optics and just morally, ethically asking our town employees to be full in person and not doing so ourselves, at least for the select board. And certainly, as David said, the burden of administrating all of the town business on Zoom is massive. And so, yeah. Any other thoughts on this, or does someone care to make a motion?
I move to approve and authorize the town administrator to sign. Wait a minute.
Where are we?
Next one down.
Yeah. I move that the July 27th, 2020 reopening plan be rescinded as of June 1st, 2021, and that the May 24th, 2021 update take effect as of June 1st, 2021.
I'll second that.
Moved by Selectman Late, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. Motion passes. Thank you all very much. And we have before us an agreement for emergency medical services from Northeast Mobile Health Services with some minor amendments to the previous one we were operating on. Is that correct, David?
Yes, minimal.
Yep.
Primarily in some of the definitions of how things were defined, which has impacted the response time. The fines have changed and some other nibbles around the edges, but
okay.
All right.
Essentially it's certainly not a reduction in service. Let's put it that way.
Great. Would someone care to make a motion?
I move that the board approve and authorize the town administrator to sign the emergency medical services agreement with Northeast Mobile Health Services for the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 at a cost of $54,413.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Barnett Parker, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson,
Yes.
Selectman Ray,
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker,
Yes.
Selectman Dunn. My vote is yes. The motion passes. Great. Selectman update. Selectman Late, do you have an update for us?
I have no update.
Okay.
Really sorry.
That's all right. No update is just a fine update. Selectman Garrettson, do you have an update for us?
I do not.
All right. Selectman Ray.
Well, I just want to let you know that the broadband committee had its first meeting on the 18th, and you have the minutes in the packet someplace. Draft minutes in section E is available.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
And Selectman Barnett Parker.
Not at the moment.
Okay, and I have no updates. We have the treasurer and payroll warrants to approve and sign in the future. Can I have a motion?
Yes. I move that the board approve the treasurer's and payroll warrants.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Ray, seconded by Selectman Garrettson. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Selectman Dunn, my vote is yes. The motion passes. And in order to complete our business tonight, we need a motion. And then we will convene this open part and click a new link and be in a new executive session. So can I have a motion, please?
I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to Title I MRSA, Section 4056C, to discuss the possible disposition of real property or premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the town.
Second.
Moved by Selectman Garrettson, seconded by Selectman Barnett Parker. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, Selectman Late, what's your vote?
Yes.
Selectman Garrettson.
Yes.
Selectman Ray.
Yes.
Selectman Barnett Parker.
Yes.
Done. My vote is yes. We are entered into executive session. Thank you all. Thank you for those who watched tonight, and we will see you over in the executive